Tell your other collectibles that quarter's in session. Here's a look at the Hiya Toys Exquisite Mini Judge Dredd. Exquisite Mini is a new standard setting series for 1/18th scale, featuring super articulation action figures from Hiya Toys. First, before we check out the Judge Dredd Exquisite Mini, I'd like to thank the folks over at Hiya Toys that have provided the sample that we're going to be having a look at in this review. They have now produced a whole bunch of Exquisite Mini Judge Dredd characters, all of which we will be looking at in upcoming reviews. And this is also leading to the announcement that they're going to be doing a 6 to 7-inch scale Judge Dredd line. Pretty exciting news. In the meantime, though, backtracking to a smaller size Dredd, this figure stands 3 3/4 of an inch tall, or the figure of Judge Dredd is about 9.5 centimeters in height. Dredd doesn't do too bad for accessories. The figure, first of all, comes included with a display stand. The shape of the display stand is nothing new here, as it seems to be the same shape of stand that we've always gotten with Exquisite Minis from Hiya Toys, but what, though, is different is the new detailing that they've designed on the top of the stand. It seems to be maybe the outer areas of the cursed earth, but you've got all this cool little skeletal remains. And again, on a more dried up surface. Really like the look of these display stands. And I would imagine, too, when we look at more Exquisite Minis of the Judge Dredd characters, that the stands are probably going to be quite consistent with one another, utilizing the same sort of terrain. Along with that, as we've certainly seen in the past, you get yourself these eye brackets, and they slot in provided slot sections here on all the sides of the rectangle. So you simply just plug these in place, take yourself then a secondary display stand, or a third display stand, or a fourth display stand. You get the idea. You simply just interlock them with one another. We're going to take the eye bracket off for right now. I noticed one thing about the eye brackets, and it maybe isn't so much the brackets themselves, but the actual slot that they actually fit inside of seems to be more tighter quarters than maybe some of the earlier stands we've gotten before. So I don't know if they've actually just reduced the width of these. Not really sure, but nice looking display stand either way. I'm going to move that to the side. The figure also comes included, of course he has to, comes included with a little lawgiver. I love the look of the lawgiver. Some of you may prefer the lawgiver from maybe like the Sylvester Stallone. I know some people would say, blasphemy, you're talking about Sylvester Stallone. I actually do like the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie. But here we have the lawgiver, though, his trusty sidearm. And this does fit into his hands. You were about to think I was going to say arm. It does fit actually into his hands, although it does require a little bit of swapping of hands. We'll do that in a moment. Or what you can also do, too, just holster to the side of Dredd's leg. He does actually have a holster. Looking at it for a second, I thought I had to flip it around the other way, but actually the lawgiver fits fine into the holster you just located on the side. You just slide that in, and then he's always got that to carry around with him. I'm not even sure how he'd be able to really move his leg. Of course, you would imagine that the lawgiver would just get in the way of things, but he does have at least a place to conveniently store the firearm if ever he needs it. We're going to remove it for at least right now, as like I said, the figure also comes include some swappable hands. I guess before we talk about the swappable hands, Judge Dredd also comes include his baton. The baton is very nicely colored here in silver. The handle itself looks like it's been wrapped off in more brown coloring, but it's a nice looking baton. I prefer, though, the lawgiver of the two, but I'm glad to see that they included something else also as well. The figure also comes included. Obviously, relaxed hands aren't going to do the job of holding anything, so he comes included with a couple of gripping hands. One very designated for the lawgiver, and then obviously one for holding the baton. This is just a straight gripping hand. This is a trigger firing hand. And what you're going to do is just going to grab Judge Dredd's hand. We're just going to wiggle it off the forearm. Careful while doing it, though, because it is very small pegs after all. Just going to remove that like that. Then we're going to go ahead and take the hand, the trigger firing hand. We're just going to attach that in place. And then Judge Dredd then has the means to hold the lawgiver. Careful while attaching the lawgiver, though, as there's a couple of times I've done this, and the hand ends up popping off the peg. And I have to go, of course, retrieve it on the ground. That's what it looks like with Judge Dredd then holding the firearm. The thing about it, unfortunately, though, is when we get to more of the articulation, you'll kind of see more what I'm talking about. But there's joints technically in the elbows, but it's very hard to move the elbows because he's got these large elbow pads in the way. So when it comes to really more him like displayed with the gun, it's actually better suited just to bring the shoulder forward or just sort of rotate the entire arm around and have him displayed that way. That looks nice. Going to go ahead and remove that for right now because I just don't want to lose it. We'll put that to the side. Getting now a closer look at Judge Dredd. Now, again, they are going to be doing a whole line of Judge Dredd characters. This of the more 3 3/4 inch scale, but they're also going to be doing a full-sized 6 to 7 inch scale Judge Dredd line too, and I'm super excited for that. This based more, again, on the comics, not, again, the Judge Dredd necessarily from Sylvester Stallone's movie, which, again, broke the one cardinal rule that Judge Dredd never removes his helmet. Speaking of helmet and the face that's underneath it, a nicely well-represented case here of Judge Dredd, although I will say, unfortunately, it does look like they've left a little bit of paint off. Maybe it's just the way that they've sculpted the lip here, but I feel like they probably could have colored in the lip a little bit more. But it's a nice representation, again, of Judge Dredd. The helmet well painted. You can see, again, he's got the little badge there above his helmet as well. Obviously, can't remove it. It's all one piece. And also, when it comes to the articulation, one thing we'll talk more about also then is the fact that the neck and the head are all one piece. So when you are moving the neck, the head has to go along with it. I will maybe say that the neck is a little on the longer side, but again, basing it from the source material, the original drawings of Judge Dredd does give him a very long, almost exaggerated looking neck. It looks the size of a tree trunk, but it's a nicely sculpted head sculpt overall. Of course, he does have the shoulders very large, oversized on the sides. One is that of the eagle. Again, you got some nice representation of gold handled here, painted with what seems to be a darker wash of brown over top of it. And then on the other side is more just a kind of almost like a barrel-shaped design that he has for the other shoulder. Of course, he does have the badge there in the middle, indicating that this is Dredd. Some nice chain work has also been painted in there as well. I mean, the fact that this is as small as it is, and yet they managed still to go in there and paint the individual links without making too much of a mess is really nicely done. The only thing I would say, though, is Judge Dredd's torso, at least on mine, it seems like it's slightly shifted to the side. I thought it was maybe a case where I probably could correct it, but every time I seem to move it, maybe it's a little bit better than what it was. It always seems like it's a little off aligned. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact he has such a very large belt like this and a very more tapered, narrow off abdomen area. Speaking of the belt, by the way, got some nice detailing done to the belt as well. You've got some red and white stripes, of course, then the gold of the middle belt buckle, and all these nice little pockets making up the majority of his belt. I can't even imagine what he's all storing in those belt pockets, but either way, he's got some really nice sculpting added in there as well. Again, my only real criticism is the fact that the size of his arms already being big, and then he's got these large elbow pads. It basically means that he can't even move his elbows. You can move them a little bit. You can see just how little of a hinge joint that's actually visible, but you can only move the elbows just by a little bit on this side, and I can't seem to move the elbows at all on this side. It's very, very tight. I can move it just a little bit, but there definitely seems more resistance on this side than there is on this side here. Again, when you get down a little lower in the figure, of course, you got the large knee pads. Again, the color is really good on this. You got not only the lighter coloring of the green, but they've also washed or airbrushed almost, it seems, a darker green over top. So things like his knee pads stand out, and even like his boots also stand out as well. He does have, obviously, a peg hole, but he doesn't have it on both sides of his feet. He only has it on the one side. So when it comes to choosing, you really only have this choice to choose from. It's only on this side. For the figure's articulation, as I already mentioned, the head and the neck come as one piece. So when you are rotating the neck, the head's going to go along with it. Head does look down this far, head looks up, and also you can rock it back and forth as well. For the shoulders are obviously going to be a little bit more limited. I mean, it's just by the nature of the way he's designed. You can rotate his arm back and forth, but this side, you only get to about there, and you can tell right away. You're not supposed to move it any further. This arm, actually, despite for having a larger shoulder pad, he can actually move it, it seems, a lot better than the other side. He does have also the means to hinge his arms outward, and the arms actually work a lot better to hinge out than I thought they would be. Now, here's where, again, like the restrictions are. He does have a swivel here in the forearm, but when you can see, like, that's how much of a hinge joint you have to work with. And again, it works better on this side than it does on this side of the figure's body. Hands rotate also all the way around. Just be careful that the hands don't fall off in the process. Figure has an upper torso ball joint. Figure has also a lower torso ball joint as well. The legs split out what seems to be on a ball joint. You can take the legs and move them forward. You can move them back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. A double hinge on the knee, which is nice to see. And then the figure has some pretty good articulation when it comes to his ankle, not only up and down, back and forth also as well. Again, just by the sizing of the figure as well, he's going to have a little more of a top-heavy issue, just because, again, like he's got so much sculpting making up the majority of his shoulder pads. If you feel like the figure is going to have a tumble at any time, simply just take yourself to display stand. And the peg is a little harder to see. It's actually just right there, just kind of neighboring the kneecap of the skeleton here. And then you're going to just take yourself to display stand, find, of course, the means to line it up to the hole, plug it in place, and then Judge Dredd can be displayed on top of the cursed earth display stand. A nice looking Dredd though. Really nice looking Dredd. If this is any indication of what we're going to be getting with the larger scale Judge Dredd, I say yes, please. More Judge Dredd figures from the folks over at Hiya Toys. Wanted to, of course, when it came to the Judge Dredd figures, I wanted to look at Judge Dredd first. Then, of course, we're going to be looking at all their extra characters, makeup, Cursed Earth. And of course, if it's going to be Judge Dredd's world, we're going to be looking at the rest of the judges as well, all in upcoming reviews. While perhaps maybe lacking some of the articulation in the elbow department. Chalk it more up to the fact that he has these large elbow pads after all. It'd be hard for anybody. I wouldn't even be able to move my elbow with our elbow pads the size that he has. That does limit, of course, the little bit of hingeability that those elbows do possess. But from head to toe, the figure still possesses all the articulation that one would come to expect now from the folks over at Hiya Toys. For their size, they're doing some of the best 3 3/4 inch figures around. Case in point, obviously, is the stuff that we're looking at now with Judge Dredd. The figure looks fantastic. Pulled right from the pages of the original comics that he appeared in. I don't know whether we are going to be getting anything spun off from that, meaning whether, I don't know if Hiya Toys is any planning to do any of the movie Dredds, for example, the stuff that we got with Carl Urban with that single standalone Dredd, or before that, of course, the one that we got from Sylvester Stallone. I would love to see them approach Judge Dredd from the movie standpoint, but I'm loving what we're getting so far from the comic line of Judge Dredd figures, and certainly, yes, more will be coming more to this channel. So if that's the kind of thing you guys are interested to see, definitely come back to the channel to see more Judge Dredd Exquisite minis. Once again, though, to a big thank you to the folks over at Hiya Toys that did provide this sample of the Judge Dredd comic Exquisite mini that we can have a look at in this review. If you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit it with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and of course on board to see more, then make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. If you guys are also interested to check out more from Hiya Toys, popping up also at the very end of this video will be a playlist of all the other things I've covered for Hiya over the years, with all future videos showing up in there as well. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.